Okay guys, let's try this angle and see if this is any better. So I know it's the same video, but different angle. Okay, so we're on to the second type of bag. And we're going to stick with the same cutting dimensions, but I'm kicking this one up a notch. And we're going to make a seamed bag so you can see how easy that is. So I have two lining cut at 6 inches tall by 9 inches wide. Yes, you can see me. Okay, and this time we're going to use zipper tabs. So I've cut my zipper at 8 1/4 inch because I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So 1/2 inch times 2 is 1/2 inch, but the thickness of the vinyl will make this zipper push out a little bit more into the seam allowance area of the bag. So I want a little bit more cushion. So I made it 8 1/4 inch. We'll see how that works. So these are the zipper tabs we're going to put on the back, on the end of our zipper. And then here's our two panels that we're going to seam together. And I'm using these two different materials. I have it the wrong way. And so we're just going to do a quick little seam of them and then top stitch it. And I'm going to try and put this thread. Hopefully we'll have better luck with our thread now that it's coming off the spool a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and angle this to me just so I can see what I'm doing a little better. And so I'm going to quickly just go ahead and seam these two pieces together. And I'm going to put the shorter piece on the top. And you can, again, use clips. Oh, I put all my clips in this little pouch from earlier. You can use clips to hold that in place. Honestly, as small as this is, probably don't really even need clips, but in the interest of teaching you properly, let's use some clips. So, one thing about the clips to notice, there is a right and a wrong way of the clip. So hopefully you can see that. This is flat and this is curved. The curved part should go on the top as you're clipping because it's easier than to pull the clip off as you get to it. But if you have the curved part on the bottom, it's going to push up on your material. I think that's good. And I'm going to do a chain stitching, which if you're not familiar with chain stitching, just means you keep stitching. You just let this thread run out a few millimeters in between the two pieces you're stitching, and then you just stitch the next one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain stitch these together, and then I'm immediately going to flip them open, and I'm going to do the method they call butterfly method, which is where you open the seam allowance, open it, and then we're going to go ahead and top stitch down both sides. Okay, so I have this all ready to go. I know it's probably a little dark in here now, but apologize for that. We'll see if we can make do. All right, I'm going to set this at 3 inches since we're working with vinyl. And then when I move to the top stitching, I'm going to switch it to 4. Let me get my presser foot in place here. And we want to make sure I'm going to do 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm right on my 1/4 inch mark here. And we're going to make sure that we do a back tack at both ends. Oops. Trying to get my foot in the right position. Okay. And I actually have a seam guide. I should put that on. Maybe I'll put it on for the next video segment. That helps to keep the seam allowance even. Am I getting off my 1/4 inch? No, I'm on it. I just ordered this super cool washi tape, I guess it is, from Seems So Awesome, I think is their group name. And it has all the markings on it, so you can put it on your sewing machine bed and See, now I'm moving right into the next one, back stitch. Oops, my thread came undone. Of course it did. So you can put it right on the bed of your machine and then put this tape on it, and it has all the measurements for you to guide along. Now this is really like not feeding off of here good at all. Oops. Well, that didn't help. Just pulled this thing off. All right, let's try this again. Hopefully it'll get better. I don't know. Okay. I'm gonna just blame this as being a tightness of the spool, because I had this issue with my brother, and it's actually one of the reasons why I got this machine. Because my brother machine, every time I would use a thread cutter, it would cut the thread so short that it came on out of the needle, and it drove me crazy. Absolutely drove me crazy. Okay, this is not working. Let's just manually thread it. I think it's just because I'm at a weird angle here. So let's get that in there. Sorry, gonna see my gray here. This is so amusing. I don't know if you guys have this issue, but I'm now 53 and I now have to have 2 pairs of glasses, and I'm starting to think I might need 3 pair. I have to have 1 pair for the computer, 1 pair for driving and everything else. And now I'm starting to think I need a 3rd pair for stuff like this. Lovely, getting older. Okay, go at this again. One other thing you can do that's actually, if it's something that you're always using the same seam allowance, you can take a couple of layers of painter's tape, especially, you know, us embroiderers, we usually have some kind of painter's tape, and then just, I do like 2 or 3 layers, and then just line it up against your seam allowance line, and then your fabric can guide against that. I am going to double check the width of this when I'm done, that it matches my lining, because this underneath vinyl is very thick. So one of the things you have to take into consideration is when you are doing your seam allowance, if there's a very thick material that you're using, it's quite possible that it's going to take up more space in your seam, and your seam allowance is going to be a little bit different. Okay, so there we go. So now we're going to do what we call butterfly it. So we don't even need to press this. You know, we can't press it with an iron anyway, but you just kind of press it as you go along underneath. And I might need to use that Teflon foot. We'll try it. I'm going to move up to a 4 for top stitching. And then I'm just going to start here. Can you see it? I have it butterflied. I'm going to start on one side. And then we're just going to go along. So this time, this foot is on that seam, going that way. And then underneath, you reach under, and you just kind of make sure it's separated as you go along. So I'm just going to do the one little back tack. And again, this is called the butterfly method, because you're opening that seam up. And the reason we do this is it helps keep that seam laying nice and flat, and you get your final overall look is better. And when you get to the end, you don't even need to take it off. Just go ahead and pivot. And I'm gonna have to pull it up. Sometimes you can line it up perfectly, so you don't even have to pull it up. And then just start down on the other side. And this is the side that might be a little bit wonky without the Teflon foot, so let's give it a try. And then make sure it's flat underneath. And just, you can feel from the top that it's flattened, but then just reach underneath if you need to and make sure it stays open. I think my thread broke again. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm going to be right back. Okay, sorry about that. We had a little thread snafu, so I've moved over to using the thread cone. And let's see if we get a little bit better success with that. So we're butterflying open, holding the bottom of that open at the underneath. And something is sticking. If it sticks on the bottom of your sewing machine plate, you can put a piece of tissue paper. A lot of people will take a piece of tearaway stabilizer and tape that to the bottom of your sewing table, and then just cut out the hole for the needle. Okay, we're going to save that piece for the back. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and top stitch the other panel. After all that, I'm going to start on the thicker side this time. And so again, just kind of flatten this down to give it a little bit of memory, and then slide it underneath. And we're at 4mm seam length, and then you'll just come underneath as you're stitching and make sure that that butterfly stays open. And this doesn't seem to want to go. Okay, so now I have it on the thread cone and then feeding through the thread holder on the top of my Juki. See if that gives us a better result. I don't feel like it's sticking on the vinyl really, on the top. Okay. And I'm going slow because this is top stitching, so you want it to look really nice. Seems like this noise is from me using a larger needle. I don't know if you can hear that, but I don't like that sound. All right. There we go, one side, not bad. Get this tail out of my beginning here. So this type of bag, I would say you would probably want to add a couple more dollars to selling it, because it's definitely a lot more specialty vinyl. This is actually a glow-in-the-dark vinyl. And both of these are a little bit more expensive vinyl. And there's a little bit more work involved because we're adding the little seam here. It just gives it a nicer look. All right. There we go. And then that helps it, the seam lay flat. So now we're ready to go ahead and add our zipper. But before we do that, we need to actually add our zipper tabs toward the end of our zipper. So I want to double check and make sure that my panels are the same as my lining, just to make sure my seam is good on it, and they are perfect. Okay, so here's our seam tape. So what I did is, I learned this trick, a friend showed it to me. I added one zipper, and then so that I could keep the zipper closed in the middle, I added another zipper and then cut it off and trimmed it to what I needed it to be. So that's if you're using zipper tape. Oops. It's hard to find a comfortable place to rest my foot without engaging that that thread cutter. And where did our little tabs go? Sorry, guys. There they are. They are hiding on us. Okay, so I cut these at 1 1/8 and 1 1/4. I was going to do a 1 1/4 each, but I didn't like how thick the it looked. So I did 1 1/8 because 1 would be a little too narrow. So all we're going to do is wrap it around this evenly. And if you want, you could actually kind of let it be a little bit farther on the top than the bottom so that you can be 100% sure that you're going to catch that back in your seam. So, and then just put a little clip on it to hold it. And then the clip, you want to keep it right on the very edge because there's not a lot of room here for the clip. And do that on both ends. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch this down to a 3-inch. Normally that's our seaming stitch length, but for this we just want to do it instead of 4. We want to do a 3 so that it's more secure. We did 4. I don't think it would be very secure. And then we're just going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the vinyl. So I'll hold this up and show you here in a second what I did. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I have just a smidge underneath that's showing. All right, I'll go ahead and now this might be a little bit harder to do because you're gonna have to hold it with your finger too, but this might be a little bit harder since there's the vinyl on the top and bottom. So let's just go ahead and do this and then back stitch, back tack. And then once you get over here, you should be able to pull this out and just hold it in place with your fingers. And you hear it it's a little bit harder to go over that zipper because again, it is nylon, but it's a little bit, these custom zippers are just a little bit thicker, the teeth, than our traditional dressmaker zippers. All right. Now we're going to do the same on this side. It's not wanting to go. There it goes. All right. So now we're ready to do our bag. So one of the things that you'll want to do is get a marking pen, and an erasable one would be best. And we're going to now have to halfway mark on our zipper so that we can line it up on our panels. So go ahead and fold this in half and then mark the halfway mark. Now some people will do a notch. I do not notch my zippers. I think that's risky and that you risk them coming unraveled or tearing. I don't do that. Don't notch my zippers. So just mark in the seam allowance So you'll have it to line it up with the bag, because this is important that we line it up evenly. It's not going to extend to the ends. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and mark. So decide if you want it like this or like this. I want it like this. So I'm going to go ahead and fold this in half at the top and bottom, and I'm just going to put a tiny little notch with my scissors just to mark that. So just cut a tiny little notch. That marks your center. Do the top and bottom on all 4 panels. If you prefer, you can use a marking pen. And then do the lining as well. And again, you can go ahead, if this is your desire, you can get your basting tape out and use that to baste your zipper down. I'm not going to do that. So discussed in the other video, but that is an option you can do. And it's a valuable option for a lot of people if it makes you feel a little bit more safe. I will tell you, I didn't mention it in the last video, because I basted this first. Well, it looks pretty good on both sides, but my zipper's not really that wavy. And that's one of the drawbacks to sewing it all at once, is you're more likely to get that little wavy zipper. Whereas if you baste it first or use the glue, I'm sorry, some people do use glue, the double stick tape. If you do that, then it's held down firmly, so you're not as likely to stretch the zipper or the panels, and so you don't get a wavy zipper. Okay, so all my panels are now, the middles are marked. So we're gonna go ahead and take our front panel, which is the one I did not mess the top stitching up on, and we are going to lay our zipper with the pole that way, and we're going to mark that little line we made right up with our little notch, and then we're going to clip it in place. And you see immediately our little zipper head is in our way. I'm gonna move it down to the bottom. So we have to be more cognizant of that. With this method, you don't have the ability to keep the zipper pull off the pouch. And I'm seeing already that I'm not lined up right, because see, there's not that much space down there and there's way too much on here. So somehow I've gotten off kilter, so I need to redo this. So that's your other method of making sure it's correct, is it should be even on both ends. So it's really easy with these clips on to pull the zipper against the vinyl until you get enough of them on here. There's a little bit of give. And I'm afraid this might end up still getting into our seam allowance. I'm a little worried that I might have, see that? We're gonna have to be real careful. It took up a little bit more space than I expected it to. Yeah, it's just over 1/4 inch on that end. Let's check the other end. Just getting this lined up. Yeah, it's gonna be real tight. So So then I would recommend, if you're using a real thick vinyl like I did, to cut your zipper at 8 inches, not 8 1/4. So I hope that makes sense what I was trying to explain. If you look at how thick this vinyl is, it's the actual depth of the vinyl, which is like 1/8 inch or 1/16 inch, is going to push this way and make it a little bit longer. But I don't want to undo my zipper, so we're just going to deal with it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a basting stitch on for my seam length, and I did cut this tab a little bit wide, so make sure you're lining it up, the zipper top, not the zipper tab, with the top of your panel. And it's just a basting, so we don't need to back tack. And I'm just going to slowly go along so that the zipper stays at the top of the vinyl. Remember, this is not a race. When you get more experienced, then you can race through these bags like you see Lauren or Kasaya. But when you're just starting out, take your time. It's not a race. Okay, I'm going to leave the needle down, and I'm going to move my zipper pull out of the way now. Okay. And again, make sure the zipper is lined up with the top of your vinyl, not necessarily the zipper tab, because it's a little bit long. All right, now we can go ahead and move to the back, to the lining, and line up our lining and do our full 1/4 inch seam. So just gonna line up our little middle notch there. And sometimes when you have a situation like this, if we take this clip off, we're likely this is probably going to come off and it's not going to stay even. So I'm going to start stitching here and ignore this and then come back around and finish it. Again, not a race. And again, I'm going to go ahead and pull this at the end just to hold it in place, so that's even, so that way I know that that is square at that end. Okay, I'm going to come a little bit farther out of the way there, and do my 1/4 inch at a stitch length of 3. Okay, got close to that zipper pull, so I'll reach in and move it out of the way. And you could actually sew this from the vinyl side instead of the lining side. Doesn't really matter once you have it secured together. Just make sure it's even. And see, it's pushing up a little bit there because the vinyl on the bottom is a little bit thicker. So it's pushing our lining a little bit. It'll be okay in the end, but that's just one of the things you have to watch for. So I probably should have used a little bit more pins there. And see, I'm having the same issue here with it's going to try and get up that hill of that tab. And it's going to struggle because I don't have a hump jumper. And I didn't get to top stitch that, but that's okay. So you can see on the back it's not quite even. So I'm going to go ahead and just start this over here and come back in a little bit and do that seam again. All right, Now we're going to come down here to the piece where we couldn't get to it because it just, the clip holding it together was too thick. And now we have enough of this together that we can get it pinned in here. We gotta move our zipper pull. So now you can go ahead and replace this and go ahead and turn it on this side and start. So it's just a little trick you can do if you're having trouble reaching all of that at the beginning. Just ignore it, leave it pinned, and then come back from the other direction and sew it. Okay, now let's do our other panel. All right, we got to do our top stitching first. So now when we do our top stitching, we're only going to top stitch from the zipper tab to the zipper tab. Okay, so go ahead and flip this over and finger press or use your iron to press your lining. And then I'm going to secure it at the end. I'm just going to finger press mine. And this vinyl is actually pulling a little bit more, so this might be a little bit harder to keep down. So I'm just finger pressing it. And then over here, just go ahead and make sure that it's even and pulled away, and then put a clip there. You're using cotton, then use pins, and then pull the lining so it meets the bottom and clip it in a few places. And that just helps keep it. You can either clip it or you can use your hands. And that helps to keep it pulled away while you're doing the top stitching. So for top stitching, we're going to go to a 4. And then I'm going to, sort of like we did the butterfly method here, I'm going to reach under and make sure that I'm pulling this out as I go along. And that it's staying out, because the idea is to flatten the lining so that it doesn't get stuck against your zipper. Okay, so we're going to do one forward and one back just to lock it in. Okay, and now since I have the zipper open, see how I can actually reach in here and pull this at the same time. And it might be difficult right over this big juncture here. You just go slow, and you're guiding the edge of your presser foot on the edge of the vinyl. If you're using 1/8 inch, I should say. But that's your goal. You want 1/8 inch top stitch. And again, I'm stopping every couple of inches to make sure that it's folded out underneath. And see how holding that clip down there really helps to secure that. And again, we're only going to top stitch through to the tabs. Move the zipper pull out of the way. We do not want to top stitch all the way to the end. Okay. All right, there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat for the second panel. So now we got to make sure that we have it the right direction on the back. I want it to look like this on the back, so I needed to fold it like this. So that way it'll look like this on the back. Alternatively, if you fold it like this, then both pieces will be on that side. But the problem with that is, then if this doesn't line up exactly, you might be able to tell at the bottom seam. So I'm going to flip-flop mine so they look the same from both directions. Okay, and then I'm going to, again, go back down to we can leave it at a 4 for basting. And here, this time, we actually have our vinyl edges to match up as well, in addition to the centering tick marks we made. So we can make sure everything lines up. And so it should line up over here. Let me close the zipper for a minute. When you have the zipper open, it's kind of see, it's not lining up. So I want to make sure it's lined up there for sure. So the top of the zipper, the vinyl, and then this side needs to match up too. So let's actually put the clip in over here so we can hold it in place. Make sure it stays lined up. Taking the extra step to do this really helps in the long run. Okay, now we have the zipper lined up at the top. And then now you see it meets down here as well. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and start here and baste the zipper in place at 1/8 inch. Again, remember the tab is, oh, I need to move the zipper pull, sorry. Oh, let's do it from the back. And then we'll move the zipper pull. So the tab is not included, so make sure you're not stitching over that. Sorry, make sure you're not including that in your seam allowance basting. Okay. Stitch length 4. And just make sure that your zipper and the edge of your vinyl are in line the whole time. My clips are upside down, so I decided to stitch from the other direction. So I don't know how long extra does it take to do this. Maybe 2-3 minutes. And it saves you from having to use double stick tape, which can gum up your needle and cause you broken stitches. And it saves you from having the wavy lines. When you get really, really good and experienced, then you can probably whip it all together. Oh, I'm really going to have trouble with my side seams. We're going to get our tab stuck in it. That's going to be a bummer. Okay. See how I'm already over here? It's just stretched too far. And so it's going to end up getting stuck in our seam. I don't know how it got off kilter so much. Is our zipper tab actually uneven? Okay, well, we're just going to suffer through. So just remember and cut your zipper at 8 inches. Okay, now let's do our lining. And then we're going to move back to our 3 inch or 3 millimeter stitch length. And stitch this together at 1/4 inch. I follow this one lady. She does production sewing. And she leaves a little bit of a an 1/8 of an inch or so top before she attaches her zipper, and she eyeballs it, and it just amazes me. I'm like, wow, how does she do that? Okay, thinking okay on this side to start, even though that's there. So let's give it a whirl. But again, if you don't think your machine can handle it, then just go ahead and start underneath it and back up to it later. Okay, I'm keeping an eye that my lining is staying in place down underneath as I move these clips away. What can happen easily, especially if you over clip, is that your lining can pull loose underneath. Now I'm getting close to my pole, so I'm make sure my needle's down, reach under and open up the zipper. Oh, I keep hitting the thing. No, I'm still learning, guys. Okay, I'm gonna back up a few steps because I think I went past with those cuts. I want to make sure my stitches are secure. Okay. Yeah, there is an attachment you can use to disable the foot cutter, but you pay extra for the foot cutter. So I don't want to disable it. I just have to keep using it and get used to it. Okay, and back tack. All right. Now we're going to go ahead and finger press this lining. And then we're going to open this up and top stitch. So again, go ahead and pull your lining down and clip it to the bottom. And that helps hold it in place when you're going along. We're going to move up to 4.0 top stitch, seam length. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to open the zipper up so I can reach in and help separate a little bit better. So holding it, and we're going to start at the tab. So one step forward, one back. So you need to lock that top stitch. Okay, make sure that this is nice and flat. We want your foot, if you're using this 1/8 inch hinge zipper guide. I've actually been using this for just about everything on this, all the sewing I've been doing on here. And okay, let's move our zipper out of the way. And then just keep making sure that it's even. So that our lining is still stitched down there. And again, we're only going from tab to tab. All right, there you go. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and join the bag together, just like we did with the version 1. We're just going to do linings together with the exterior together. Just bring your lining corners together and clip those together. We are not boxing it yet. We haven't got to that step yet. And again, you can use regular pins for this. And we want to make sure that we push our zipper in towards our lining. So ideally we should be able to stitch right past that. I think we'll be able to on this side, but because I kind of monkeyed it up a little bit, the other side we might end up catching part of the zipper tab. So make sure that this is lined up well and put your little clip in there to hold it in place. And then do the corners. See, this is getting a little bit extra here, so I don't think it's pulled down far enough down here. See what I mean? It's got a little lip and it wasn't. So that's one way you can double check yourself. Your corners don't meet, they should meet. Okay. And over here is where we kind of monkeyed it up. We're probably not going to be able to bypass that. Again, make sure that you line that up as best as you can and clip it. And we'll handle that when we get to it. Sometimes what I like to even do with something like this is I'll go in and do the zipper junction first and then go all the way around. That way I can make sure it's right, and then I have to pull it out. I only have a small section to work with. So I'll do that and show you what I mean. Okay, so we want to go down to 3-inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is start from this direction. And it's without the hump jumper, it's really kind of hard to know. I wish I had the hump jumper. So I'm going to start here and work my way just to cover this and make sure that it's stitched together. So there. And then if I have to make any adjustments, I can. Oh, you can't really see this. I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can adjust the angle, but so what I'm doing over here is actually kind of making sure it's still on top. There we go. As I start to stitch it down. Okay. Much easier if you have the hump jumper. And it's gonna struggle trying to get through this depth here. So this looks like it might be good. No. I need something that's, I'll try the ruler again. To help lift that up a little and get over the juncture. Okay, let's see if that helps. And actually, I think I'm actually going to try and hand crank through this because I'm getting that tab and we didn't want to get the tab. That whole idea was to avoid the tab, but because I messed up, I'm going to be going through the tab. So I'm just going to go ahead and hand crank this so I don't risk breaking the needle. And I'm getting really close to the tab. There's always ways around issues. The key is knowing what to do in a different scenario. And hand cranking it is the right thing to do to avoid breaking your needle. And my seam allowance right here is going to be a little bit less because I was trying to bypass those tabs. And so then what we can do is once we get past this, right, I'll go ahead and stitch the lining a little bit. And you see it's going to come down the presser foot. All right, so I got really close there, trying to get through that tab. So now what you can do is go ahead and open this up and look and see if it looks okay to you. Oh, I just tore it. But you would just kind of look, make sure that looks okay. I just tore that piece. See, I did bypass it over here, but I caught it just a little bit on that side. Okay. So then you can go ahead and start it from this side. And then you already have smashed it down with your hand cranking. Sorry, I can't find my 1/4 inch line there. And so you can go ahead and start it from this side and it'll be easier to get over. Carefully. And then go ahead and finish your 1/4 inch on this side. I hope that made sense. So you gingerly get through that hardest joint and then you can go ahead and finish off the other side of the bag. So we're going to go ahead and keep switching this around. And don't forget, we're going to leave an opening in the lining. So we're going to switch this at a 1/4 inch. I did a little back tack there. Make sure that these corners are lined up. Reclip it if you need to. So I would recommend that you don't use such a thick vinyl for your first time out. I'm going to back tack again over here, and that's just going to secure this juncture here for when we do the boxing. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and stitch on over here, and we'll go as far as we can, and then we may need to stop and hand crank just like we did before. All right, get close to here. Make sure you fold it if it has come loose, so that's lined up properly again. Oops. All right, remember we're going to use our low ruler since we don't have our hump jumper. And fold your tab against each other. And then, let's see if we can get it without hand cranking it. Make sure my lining is lined up. Oh, we did. The lining is a little bit off, but I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And then I'm going to stitch the lining from the other end, just so we can make sure we have a good seam allowance on our lining. So it's easier going back up to it. And we can stop when we get to the zipper tab. Okay. Now we just need to do the rest of this side and then our bottom. And remember, we need to leave that 3 to 4 inch hole for the lining. And you can actually bring your seam allowance for your lining in about 1/8 of an inch. And make your lining a little bit more narrow than your bag, and it will take care of some of the bagginess inside the lining. You want to make sure it stays at the right seam allowance at the top, but on the bottom and sides you can do a little bit more than 1/4 inch. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and do this side. Make sure we have enough room to line it. Turn it. Now I know you guys think we forgot about the boxing, but we haven't. So we've gotten to the second method of doing the zipper, and now we're going to the second method of doing the boxing. You're going to need your ruler, and so what you're going to do, just like you did for the other bag, you're going to kind of separate out your corners. This time though, what you're going to do is you're going to line them up on top of each other, and this same thing applies. You should be able to feel this seam here and this seam going and jostling next to each other underneath. When you're rubbing it together with your fingers, you should be able to feel them, those seams lock in place. So it looks sort of like that, and underneath you can feel it locking in place. And then go ahead and get your little clips and clip on either side to hold it. And then what you're going to do is get your ruler, and we're going to measure, we're going to do everything 2 inches so the bags, you can see what they all look like at the end. So what you want to do is you want to get your ruler and a pen, and it can be a regular pen, and you're just going to lay, I like to find a line to lay on the seam allowance. So in this case I have that 4 right there, or you can use this. Sometimes you have to move these clips a little bit farther out of the way. So you want to, basically you're going to get a 2 inch line. There we go. See? So I know this is even, so then draw the line there. like that. And then I'm going to just do one corner at a time because these clips, so I can keep the clips out of the way. So it kind of looks like it's off kilter, but the seam is right there inside. So using your 3 millimeter stitch length, we're going to go ahead and back stitch. And then we're going to do the same thing as we did for the first bag. We're going to stitch all the way across on the vinyl side. And then we're going to do another line just inside of it, about 1/8 inch just inside. 1/8 to 1/16 inch. All right. See that? And then you can go ahead and trim this off, but we'll do that all at the end. So now, just like we did the other way, we want to make sure that this is going the same direction on both sides. So you want this to be going this way and this side to be coming this way. And reach in and make sure you can feel them being nestled, the seams nestled against each other underneath with your fingers. And this should be a point when you do this. So then go ahead and clip both ends. This is honestly the way I used to always do it until I learned the cutout method. I think the cutout method is much easier because, as you can see, this is actually, trying to hold this. You can lay it down on the table, but it's a little bit more likely to make an error than cutting flat and then sewing it. But this is the way I learned the first time I ever did a bag. This is how I learned to box the corners. Okay, so again, we're at a 3 millimeter seam length. And we're going to sew right on that line, back stitch at both ends. And then we're going to come back in 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, either way, and stitch again. That extra layer of stitching just takes some of the pressure off the seam, helps to extend the stress of the seam through more material. Now we're going to do the same thing on the lining. And the lining side is going to be a little easier because it's not as thick. So you'll be able to feel the seam allowance better too. So I have these folded both in the same direction, and I can tell when I feel underneath there's a bump. So like, oh, that's not right. So no, you have to make sure the seams are butted against each other, nestled against each other, and you can feel it. I can't show you that, but you can feel it when you're doing it in person. Put your clips. This one we might be able to lay on the table and do it because it's a little bit flatter. So find your 1 inch, 2 inch, let's see, this is 1, 2. And you see, if you do this here, can you see this a little bit? You can actually, the seam should come up to that line. And the lining, we don't need to do the double. We're just going to back tack over it fully. So I start at one end, I back tack, I go all the way across, and then I back tack all the way across. That's how I do the lining. And we just have to do the last corner. I need to make this seam allowance a little bit longer here. And we're not going to leave the corners like that. We are going to trim them. Okay. So we want to make sure we have the laying the same direction as over here, else it will be flip-flopped and it will feel wrong. So make sure this side here is coming this way and that side is going that way. And nestle it. All right. And clip. We're almost done. So I'm really bummed I messed up on the zipper tabs, but this is what happens when you do your cutting dimensions on the fly. So you'll learn from my mistake. Leave a whole inch, make your zipper a full inch shorter than your bag panel, just to allow for that extra depth from the vinyl. Make sure these stay butted against each other as you're manipulating it to get under the machine. This one's fighting me tonight. There we go. So just feel under there, make sure they're still butted against each other. All right. All right, I didn't get that one as neat, but that's okay. All right, now get your scissors or your rotary cutter and just trim off the extra at each corner. Need my better scissors. Wow, this is hard to cut through. There we go. All right, now we're just ready to turn it inside out, just like we did bag one. Reach inside and open your zipper all the way if it's not. All right, go ahead and push your corners out. Always do that before you close the bag. It's much easier to do before you close the bag than it is to do it after. Now I'm going to push this up. See, we caught it just a little bit on that side. And the reason this isn't my favorite method to do it is it's also very hard to get both sides perfectly the same dimensions, especially with the vinyl. It's much easier to do with the cotton. Okay, so that's out. Now let's see if we can push this side out a little bit. A little pencil here. This is one that we caught that I caught a little bit of it in the seam allowance. It's not too bad. I was able to get around it a little bit. See, you can see it's inside there. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pull the lining out and stitch that closed. So we'll do a better job than the first bag and put some clips on it to make sure it doesn't come undone. All right. So I'm just kind of folding it in. What I should have done was fold this out. If you fold it before you turn the bag out, it'll kind of fold together. If you fold the hem allowance, or the seam allowance, I should say, back. Okay. Still 3mm seam stitch length, and then we're going to get just as close to the edge as we can, back tacking before it then and at the end. Make sure you're catching the bottom as you go along. All right, there you go. Trim that little thread away. Put our lining inside. And there we go. So here is method 2. And see, this is a little bit clunky there. Let me get in there and see what's going on. Push that seam out a little. I don't know what I did there. But I do wish I would have noticed that before I closed the lining. So it helps to run your finger along the seams inside before you close the lining, and I didn't do that this time. And that just helps keep the vinyl separated open. Okay. And so now you have the zipper tabs, so you don't have those wonky dented in corners. So here's, let me push the sewing machine out of the way so you can see the two differences. There's version 1 and version 2. Can you see this? Version 1 and 2. And they are the same size, and they kind of look a little bit off. All right, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back with the final and third version. Okay, let's see. All right, we're on to the third version of the flat bottom bag. So, and the third version of the zipper. So we're gonna take and grab this stuff. Still using our hinge zipper foot here. Got my ruler ready. We have our zipper partially ready. We're gonna fold down the zipper on one end, and then an open end, and we're gonna add a zipper tab to the end. We have our lining and our vinyl. So, or your exterior cotton, it doesn't matter. So what I've done is we're using a panel that is 14 inches by 10.5 inches wide. And you're gonna mark the center mark of the panel right here on both sides from the lengthwise. So this is the 7 inches. Then you're going to mark 1 inch and 2 inch marks from there on both sides. The same with the lining. Then on the top, I just cut in 3/4 inch from either end. So we're creating a little bit of a bevel here so that the goal is that the top of the bag won't be so wide compared to the bottom. And so then what I did is I went from that 2-inch mark to the 0.75-inch mark, and I cut that edge off. So same thing with the lining panel. So what we're going to do to get started is get our zipper prepared. We need an 8-inch finished zipper because our top now, since we cut that off, should be 9 inches. And we want our zipper to be 1 inch less. So we have room to navigate that. All right, and we are going to need to mark one more time on the bag here. I forgot one more marking. Okay, so what we're going to do, and this is tricky, but this is a way to do the zipper by the yard so that you don't have to have a zipper tab and you don't have to have the zipper tape in your seam. So what I did is I drew a line straight across, leaving about a 1/2 inch extra there. And this is way more easy than it seems. What you're going to do is you're going to fold at that line on either side. So just fold it down. Sorry, it's much more tricky to do than I have to do it on the left side first, I think. So just fold there and make sure that that it's folded tight. Okay, so you fold there. The line is going to be the top, and you're going to fold under that back of the zipper. You're going to fold it under such that this line that you drew is perpendicular or parallel to this line. So just hold it with your finger or a pointing device, pinch it, and fold it down. So now we're right on that line. And then fold up this piece on the back so that it's now parallel like that. Then put a little clip in it to hold it in place. You see how that is now? We're going to do the same thing here. So pinch it on that line. Pinch it on that line. And then fold up the back so that your drawn line is now right even with your zipper tape line there. You don't want your pen mark to show, so make sure you fold it with just a smidge there so that the pen mark is going to be in line. So I got it folded like this, and then I'm going to push this up onto this piece of the zipper tape. And I used a regular pen. You should use a washable pen. Let me see if I can get that mark underneath a little bit. I don't want to see the ink mark. Okay. So again, fold on that line and then fold that line so it meets the zipper teeth. Just like that. And then clip it. Now put your sewing machine on a 2 seam allowance, and we're going to go ahead and hold this in place. A stiletto would be really good right now, but I don't have one. And we're just going to stitch right here to hold that in place. So start on the edge here. Get my presser foot in place. All right. So I'm just right here, making sure that this is still perpendicular. I'm going to drop my needle right there on the edge. Now I can pull my clip out. And then I'm going to just take a couple of stitches back and forth. go right over and back. Okay. Now you see that that is folded over and held in place. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Shift my clip over to this side, holding that in place so I can get that underneath here. Drop my needle down. So when I drop my needle down, I can't get on the camera enough to show you. I have it going through all layers of the zipper. And actually putting the clip in from the teeth side like this is actually better. In the back space, back tack. Okay. So this looks so much scarier than it really is. And I've seen all the other methods out there of doing this using, you know, some people wait until they're actually sewing it together and then pull it out at the last minute. I mean, I've seen all these different techniques to do it, and this just is the easiest way to do it. And so then when it gets stitched into our bag, it's going to be into the seams, and you won't see this extra. Do not trim off this extra. So I'm going to go ahead and get my lighter, and I'm going to burn it, but do not trim it, because some people tell you to trim it, but I have seen on a couple of sewist groups that this ended up coming, oh, I really melted that. You don't need that much. It came undone. And that is because they cut this off, so there wasn't enough in there. So now we need this to be exactly 9 inches. And we're going to put our tab on the end. Now this time I'm using a very thin level of vinyl, so we don't need to pay as much attention to have that extra like we did on the other bag where it was really thick. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this right at 9 inches, or sorry, 8 inches, and then cut it off. So go ahead and put your ruler down, and then put this at the top edge, and then go to 8 inches. And then draw a line, and then cut it off. So again, 8 inches. And then remember to singe the end. Oops, I blew that out with my breath. All right, there we go. Now we're gonna go ahead and add our tab to the end, just like we did before on the other one. So again, I'm going to layer it so that the bottom is slightly extended more than the top, just so that we're assured that we're going to catch the bottom in our seam. And then we're going to go ahead and stitch it with a 3 seam length. This is actually a good place where a scrap of tape helps, because it can hold the tab in place while you stitch. The double stick tape is to which I refer. Okay, I'm going to pull that clip off, keep my zipper straight, and keep my edge of my presser foot, the left edge of it is right along that vinyl. And we want to back tack. When we back tack, we want our back tack to be only as far as the seam allowance, so you don't see the back tack. All right, now our zipper's ready. So we're gonna go ahead and fold our zipper in half and mark the center so that we can line that up with our panels. So I'm just marking it with a pen, top and bottom. I'm marking it on the wrong side of the zipper. So usually if you just get a little crease in there, it'll last long enough for you to see the marking. Okay, so that's all ready to go. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick, and now we're ready to do our panels. So we're gonna start with our exterior, and we're gonna fold that in half and mark the center, the little notch. So just cut a little notch. All you need is so that you can see where the center is. So you just need to cut a tiny little notch. This is my embroidery vinyl, and it is actually a little bit slippery against itself. So keep that in mind when you're using it. Now, this is actually going to be a little bit trickier to sew because it's one loop. So when we get to the top stitching, it's a little bit trickier. And I'll show you that when we get there. So again, you're notching the very short end, the halfway mark, so we can line it up with our zipper. Okay, so start with our, there's no right or wrong way. In this method, you will need to make sure you're using non-directional fabric. In this case, mine is directional, but it's all going the same way. So find your center mark, line it up with your notch. And because this is so slippery, I am going to baste it down first and not do it all at once. Because the vinyl is very slippery, so the zipper is kind of pulling against that and sliding too easily. And I don't want that to happen. So here when you get to this end, make sure it's even because we have that little overhang. And again, this is one of those ones that if you want to use the double stick tape, you can. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself to a 4 basting stitch. And because the zipper pull is right there, I'm going to start beyond it and then come back and finish it. Just a little trick so to make yourself not go crazy. And then I'm slowly stitching this because this, like I said, this vinyl is really slippery. So the zipper tape is sliding against it. So I want to go really slow. Okay, now I can go ahead and pull the zipper pull out of the way and come up here and do the top part. And you could pull the zipper pull out of the way and do the top part all at once if you want. This is just a little, oh, I got it too. Let's see how even with that. I got off kilter from my basting. This is just a way to make sure that it doesn't slide all around. Okay, now we can go ahead and add our lining. Let's leave the zipper pull down here. And do our 1/4 inch at a 3 construction. This is the type of vinyl. It has like a flannel backing a little bit on it, but it is more likely to cut if you have too many stitches in it. So just lining up. Again, I'm going to line up the down here so it's even and clip it so I know my pieces are even at the end. And same thing here. So all those pieces should meet. Oh, my son's in there watching something and he's having a joy. I hear a lot of giggling. It's like, why don't you ever giggle that much for mama? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, seam length 3, and we're gonna do a 1/4 inch seam and back tack at the beginning and end. And it might give you a little bit of hesitation as it's going over that zipper tape. Because remember, we have the zipper tape off to the side here, the top. And once you get past that, then it should get into its little groove, and you should be able to do this 1/4 inch seam with no trouble. And see, this is still a little bit slippery, so it's kind of getting my lining out of the way there. This is when a stiletto is very helpful. I'm worried that it's kind of a kilter there, but it's okay. All right, now keep your needle down and move your zipper pull to the top. Okay. All right. And just like before, go ahead and open it up and finger press that fabric side or use your iron. And then we're going to go ahead and open this up. Use some clips to hold the edges together. Just like that. Now this is a lot longer, so as you go along, you're going to have to be a little bit more careful that you're pulling the lining and the vinyl apart. So I'm just putting a few clips in there. I'm going to go back to 4 for the top stitching. Move the zipper pull to the bottom. And as I feed under here, I'm going to be reaching under and making sure that it's separated. And again, we're going to start just at the zipper, beginning and end. And take 1 back tack. All right, and then guide along here with your fingers and make sure that you keep this separated. And I'm keeping the right edge of my zipper foot on the vinyl edge, which will give me about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I'm going to stop with the needle down, pull my zipper pull out of my way. I'm just going to go to the end of the zipper tab and then back tack. All right. So that's where we're at now. Cut your tails as you go along, else you'll forget about them and they'll get caught in your seam. All right, so now we're going to flip over to the back. Well, let's do the front here. And we're going to do the same thing, but this time our vinyl is all one piece. So we have to fold this up and meet it to the centering marks. So there's my center. I'm going to keep the zipper closed until we're done with that centering because it's just easier. So I actually can see the shadow of the ink mark through the zipper. But just mark your centering marks. And then go to each end. And move your seam allowance back down to a 3 for joining. Okay, and again, I'm going to start just underneath where the zipper pull is, and then I'll come back and do that after we move the zipper pull. And we're at a basting stitch of 4. I said 3, no, basting is 4. Don't waste thread. Okay. And we're going slow because this vinyl is slippery. If you're not using the thicker zipper tape at the end for the other bags, you don't have to do this little trick with leaving the top and then coming back to it, because this thickness isn't there in your way. But when the thickness is up there, it's just hard to get the stitch even. So you can actually, now we can actually stitch this from this side, so we can make sure it's even, and we'll finish that stitching. And I didn't back tack there because this is just our basting. And it's just that top part. Okay, there we go. So now it's time to bring the lining up, and we're going to do the same thing with the lining. Oh, I got my tab. I'm going to loosen that little stitch, see what happened. My tab flew over. But that's just our basting, so it's okay. We can pull that stitch out. Maybe. We don't want our tab like that in the finished end, so I just fixed that. All right, line up the centers. And clip. Put a clip at the end to hold it in place. Okay. Now, since the zipper pull is down here at this end, I can go ahead and just start right at the beginning of my 3 joining seam at my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we can just start right at the top. We don't need to leave it because the thick part is down at the other end. So this is our joining seam, so we do want to back tack it. And we're going to be stitching over that tab, so it's a little thicker there. And then just go ahead and finish off with your 1/4 inch seam allowance to the end. And again, I'm going a little bit slower because this vinyl is very slippery. Another situation where using the double stick tape would be beneficial because it would hold it in place and not let it slide around. Okay, now we're going to leave our needle down, reach in the middle of our vinyl, and move that zipper pull out of the way. So the head of the zipper is now out of our way. Make sure you're still lined up down here though, and go ahead and finish your seam. Get your stiletto out if you have one, back tack, because this is our seam. Okay. And I think I got a little bit off. I'm going to go do it real quick again because I got a little bit off. And it's the seam, so it's a good time to go ahead and fix it when you know you're off. Because otherwise the zipper reveal won't be even. And the zipper reveal, again, is that amount of the zipper tape or ribbon that actually shows in the finished bag. It was just a smidge off, but that's something that really bothers me. So now here's the tricky part. We have to top stitch it, and the bag is, we have a loop, right? How are we going to do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this through the tunnel here. Turn it to the vinyl is on the right side outside. Okay. Oh, this is wrinkling. I hope the wrinkles don't stay. All right, and then line the lining, fold the lining down. Again, you can finger crease that lining down or use the iron before we turn this, would have been a better idea. But you have to turn it into a tube to get to it. Okay. And I'm just reaching inside here and pulling it down and finger pressing it as I go along. Okay, so now this is the really tricky part. And it might be better to start from the other end. Right, I'm going to put a couple of clips down here just to hold this in place. And it's hard to explain how to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the top stitching here, and you're going to kind of like put it underneath the machine bat head, okay, and then you're going to glide it along and open it as you go along. So this piece here, make sure it's folded out of the way as you go along, and then you want to make sure that your lining is tucked under. And it's real tricky, but it's not hard, it's just tricky. So I'm going to make sure that I keep pulling this out of the way as I go. There's my zipper pull. I'm going to hold that out of the way, fold it. Okay. So can you see that? See how I have that? And then I'll scooch the vinyl back, opening it up as I go along. And I'm going to go real slow because this is a tricky part. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a 4 for my top stitching. I'm going to go forward 1, back tack 1. All right, I'm reaching under here, making sure this is out of the way and that this is folded back. Make sure my zipper pull is out of the way. So you just want to smooth this as you go along. And then when you get to a point where you need to adjust, leave your needle down and then pull this out of your way and smooth this section flat. All right, and you're going to keep doing that until you get all the way to the other side of the tube. So I'm folding this out down here and straightening this to the side, making sure my lining is pulled underneath, and take as many stitches you can fit in that space. So you can go about 1.5 to 2 inches at a time before you feel the bottom running out on you. So very easy, but persnickety. Is that the right way to say it? All right, we're almost done. Keep pulling the lining so it's straight. Make sure this side's not in there. Leave your needle down in between. And again, we're only going to go just to the zipper. Don't go all the way to the end. All right, we're almost to the end. back tack. And then just carefully side it out. And there you go. Now you need to flip this back to the other side so that we can finish the bag. So here's our finished zipper. Oh, and I did get it off kilter over here. What a bummer. That's okay. I don't think anybody's going to really notice that. So pull the lining and the exterior back this way so the wrong sides are back together. Okay, now here's the part that's going to be the creating of the gusset. And how we're going to do that is we're going to create a pleat. And if you're my embroidery fan here, this is the technique that we use in the flat bottom girl in the embroidery machine. We're doing the same thing, but we're manually doing it with our hands. So first, let's go ahead and fold over our zipper pocket so it's going inside. I have a little thread there I missed. And in fact, it doesn't matter which way in this version the zipper is, but it's just natural to fold it into the lining and match up your vinyl. And because this vinyl is so slippery, I'm actually gonna pre-baste these junctures because these are the important parts that we don't want to come apart. So go ahead and open your zipper. It needs to be open to be able to turn the bag. And we are going to leave an opening in the side of the lining this time to use to turn the bag. So I've got my little lining, my vinyl matching up there. And then the lining matching up. And then I'm going to pre-baste this on either side to hold it in place because that vinyl is so slippery until we do the rest of the pleating. So I'm on a 4 and I'm just going to go ahead and do an 1/8 inch seam allowance here and baste this piece together. And we're trying to avoid hitting that zipper tab when we do this all together. So I'm just going with my presser foot along the edge and I'm just going slowly so that the vinyl doesn't come apart. So now we have that held in place and I don't need to worry about it coming loose when we go to do the pleating. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. Let's start down here at the end. Just do a quick little baste. Okay, so that should help hold us together until we're finished. So that I don't forget to leave the opening for my turning, I'm going to use a couple of pins to mark where I'm going to leave that opening in the lining. So I'm going to probably have to come up pretty close because we have to pleat down here yet. Okay, so that's a really small opening, but we'll manage. Okay, so now I'll do the lining side first. So we have the center of our bottom marked, and we have 1 inch from either end of that. So you're going to take that 1 inch mark and bring it to the 1-inch mark on the other side. Just like that. And clip. So what we've done is we've created a little pleat in there. And make sure that the edges are all lined up. Just like that. All the edges should be lined up. And put a little clip or a pin in place. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we have our center marked, and then 1 inch from either side. We're going to bring those little 1-inch markers together and create a pleat. Just like that. Make sure it's all even. Just like that. And pin it. Okay. And then you can go ahead and use a pin for the other side. So this is what our lining looks like now. And if you want, you can kind of just give a little bit of a finger crease there. Just help it line up better. That's what it should look like. And here's our opening to turn it. Now we're going to do the same thing on the vinyl side. Here's our center mark. There's our 1-inch mark. And we're going to bring those two 1-inch marks together. Make them kiss. And then make sure that the raw edges are all lined up on the edge. And go ahead and put a clip in there. Just like that. And then you can go ahead and kind of coax this down the center. And it should help you line those 1-inch marks at the other end perfectly. So there's the 1-inch mark here from the center. And the 1 inch from the center there. So bring those two 1-inch marks together. Make sure they're right on top of each other, and make sure all your raw edges are lined up on the edge. All right, and then clip it. And then just to make it easier here, go ahead and fold in and lightly finger crease that. And this is what it should look like now. It's sort of, it comes in here and then it stitches. So now we're going to go ahead and stitch all the way around on both sides. Well, we're going to stitch both sides. This bottom's already stitched. Again, make sure your zipper is open on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this side and make sure you move back to a joining stitch of 3 inches, and I'm going to back tack over this inch of the pleat just to give it some extra strength. And I'll do that. I'll show you when we're done. I'll come back in and do an extra back tack on there to show you what I mean. Okay. And again, we're going to try and avoid hitting our zipper teeth or our zipper tab. My lining kind of wants to go wonky there, so just pull it out of the way. All right, and this is the side we're going to leave open, so here we can just go all the way to the end. And you can take a slightly larger seam allowance on the sides of the lining to make it lay down there better. So like bring it in 1/8 of an inch. And then back tack over the end. Okay. So now I'm going to come back over here and stitch here just inside that another 1/8 of an inch, just to give strength to that vinyl, just like we have on all the other bags. And I'm going to take it all the way down to past the pleat mark. So that 1 inch. Right, now let's go to the other side. We're going to do the same exact thing. So do 1 inch, 1/4 inch, back tack. And there's a slight little bevel there for where we trimmed off the edge. So just make sure you follow along the seam allowance. And we're getting close to our tab right here. So we don't want to go through our tab, so feel for it and make sure. But we pre-basted this so that hopefully we wouldn't go through our tab. Okay, now we're getting close to where we're going to have to turn it. So we're going to get up to that needle, and then we're going to back tack. Then go ahead and break it off and come back down over here where we're going to start it again. And we're going to back tack. And then go on to the end. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me back tack again. I hit the thing, the cutter. All right, now we're going to go ahead and come back up here and do an extra stitching to reinforce that. All the way to the 1 inch mark. All right, here we go. So now this is where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and turn this right side out through this opening. And before we do that, I mentioned this in the last video, but I didn't show you. If you fold the seam back to the hem and finger crease it, it will make it easier to close later. Grayson, can you turn that down, please? Sorry, my son's got his stuff too loud. Okay. Fold it back, and it'll make it easier to crease that later. All right, so go ahead and reach inside here, and I usually find going from to the opposite corner is easier. And one thing you can do, this is really thin vinyl, but it won't hurt. If you want to just lightly trim off that corner a little bit, it'll help lay it, but don't cut into your stitching. Okay, so reach to the other corner, and we're just going to feed this through. This vinyl is not quite as flexible as it would seem. Okay, so you're just going to work it through, and it's really hard to get this on video. I would like almost need one of those GoPros to wrap around my neck, but just gently work it through the opening. And you can actually get quite a lot through a small opening. I mean, I've done like even only had 1.5 inches to work with and been able to get a vinyl bag through it. So you just have to take your time and slowly work it out. And what you're doing is you're kind of rolling the back part of the lining into the exterior as you're pulling the exterior out. Does that make sense? See how the lining is now coming to the other direction? And then just keep working at it and push the exterior through. There you go. So once you get all the lining out, then you can turn it so it's right side out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use when you get this corners, it's easier to do it when we flip it to the outside, but you just put your fingers down in there and it helps you flip those corners out. So let me turn this to the right side so you can see, and then we'll close the hole when we're done. there's our tab. Oh, this is kind of wrinkly. I hope it like smooths out. Might have to use the iron. When you have a vinyl that gets wrinkly when you're all done, one of the tricks that you can use is to heat the pad, the pressing surface, and then lay the vinyl on it. I'm going to reach underneath through the opening of the lining so I can get my fingers up under here to push the pleat out. So if you get your fingers and straddle it on either side, you'll see it'll get to a point where when you're pushing your fingers, it won't go anymore. Right here's what you want. See how it's even on both sides? It's just easier to do it underneath the lining. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. And I switch my hand. Right, see there's still a little pleat there. You don't want that, so you need to smooth that out so it's nice and neat. And over here it's not. There we go. Now it's smoothed out. And you can feel inside. You'll be able to feel that it's correct on the inside as well, because there won't be any more give. Once it's correctly pleated out, there's no more give in there. There's nothing else to fold out. And so that's how you know it's done. See? All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and pull our lining out and close the side. And I might have to flip this out a little bit because we left such a small lining hole there. So I have to kind of, what I mean is I have to flip this back out to get to it. And then just fold it in on those creases you made before. My fingers are not working today. There we go. And then we want to take it down to a 3 seam allowance. Oh, we're still on a 3. And just get this in there. It's a little awkward because I'm going to start it from this side actually, because we have to get so close to the vinyl. Kimberly, you just messed that up. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to start it from this side, and I'm going to go as close to the edge. Actually, since this is the lining, you can do 2.5. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm catching the bottom. As I look underneath, make sure that bottom lining is being caught too. And then just do a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance at a 2.5 stitch length. Remember to back tack. And then as you get close to where the vinyl is, you'll have to kind of pivot it up so you don't hit the vinyl. And a stiletto would be very helpful right now. All right. There we go. I have a loose thread in there. And then reach down with your hands and push the lining out. And the pleats are inside the lining too, so you should be able to feel to clean those and straighten them out on both sides of the inside. All right, and there we go. So now you see how we have the flat bottom again, but because we tapered in and I need to push this out. Roll the seam out over here so that it's, you see it more. Oh, it's even on both sides. So just reach in with your hand and then roll the vinyl apart. Okay, there we go. And now, because we did the taper to the top, you see it doesn't look as drastic. See how this is so short compared to this? Now it's a little bit more natural together. So just to give you an idea of the different ways you can do it, and here's the way the top ends up looking with this method. So that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this series. I will put the cutting information for each of the bags at the bottom in the description, but I am not going to produce a PDF for these bags. There's really, you just follow along in the video, and I mean down the road I might do a PDF, but for right now I'm not going to. But if you just follow along through the video, there's really not any need for the PDF. You can follow along in the video. So there's that one, this one, and this one. And actually, I think I might have measured this one because this is taller. They should all be the same height. But this one I must have messed up in my measuring, so it's a little taller. That's okay. So this is actually a perfect size for a makeup bag, in my opinion. It'll hold everything in there. And you can use up all your pretty tapes, zipper tapes that you get. All right, if you like this video, please consider liking it. And you'll be able to see more of my content, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see when I release any new videos. But again, like I said from the beginning, these simple zipper pouches are so easy to do. There's really no way to get it, no reason to spend a fortune buying all these different patterns when they're all basically the same type of pattern. And you can mix it up and use, like for this one, we could have done a different panel at the top and cut it off so you have two different panels. But just real nice little simple zipper pouches for a multitude of uses. You just cut them in any directions, any sizes you want, and you're set to go. Thanks, everybody.